making mistakes and doing things that the palace was having to sort of control, they had bigger fish to fry, quite frankly, than Meghan Markle. Their main energies were focused on Prince Charles, at the time Prince Charles, Prince Andrew, Prince William, and Prince Harry were, those four princes, they were trying to juggle. At this moment in time, William was currently being criticized because he had gone to Switzerland to go skiing. And he hadn't gone to this Commonwealth Day ceremony at Westminster Abbey. So people thought, why are you going out and having a good time skiing with your family? How dare you? You should have been sitting in that pew at Westminster Abbey. For shame. So they're over there slapping the back of William's hand. More importantly, Prince Andrew's behavior had troubled everyone for quite a while. He had been banned in 2011 from representing Britain as a trade ambassador because he'd made a lot of crude remarks that people found off-putting. He was known as Air Miles Andy because he was constantly being reported for his travel expenses. The media found his behavior obnoxious. And then he'd been taking loans from some real unsuitable businessmen. So they just felt that he needed to just take a seat. He was embarrassing everyone. And that relationship to Jeffrey Epstein was the cherry on top of this giant pile of mess that he had created for himself. Those photographs of him walking in Central Park with Epstein had been published by News of the World in 2011. So even though it got re-brought up a couple years ago, we had been well aware that Prince Andrew had had a relationship with Epstein. And it can be debated for centuries how serious he really was with Epstein, but enough that we are very certain that he most certainly needed to take a seat and never stand back up. Well, Randy Andy's serial misconduct was scrutinized by Christopher Geidt, the Queen's tall authoritative private secretary. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. I have no doubt everyone in the comments will let me know if I am or not. But anyway, while everything in Andrew's life is falling apart and the palace is trying to maintain his image and also just, help everyone forget what he's been up to. And while there's the minor thing of William and what he's up to and people complaining about his work ethic, the greater concern that Christopher was trying to deal with was Prince Philip's feelings about Charles and any risk that Charles might pose to the monarchy when he finally became king. Charles' image as an adulterer and an old-fashioned meddler, the palace believed, needed to be transformed. I don't understand this old-fashioned meddler business. I don't know a lot about Charles, I'll be honest with you. What I do know seems to circulate completely and solely around the Diana Camilla drama. So I don't know about this old-fashioned meddler business. But anyway, they felt like his image needed to be very well worked over so that people just had good, warm feelings about him. And quite frankly, I think that the book Spare was the greatest thing to ever happen to Charles. Because even though Harry was trying so very hard to drag his dad the whole time, all anybody came away with was, what a lovely man. He's so nice. So, everything Harry does backfires. Now, to become popular, Charles needed to refrain from controversy and emerge as a discreet modernizer with a common touch. That was the belief that they felt needed to happen. That was the transforming image that he needed. Charles knew that he would need William and Harry's help in order to transform that image. So summoning his two sons, Charles' agenda at their meeting was familiar. Ever since Prince Philip had told the family's Way Ahead meeting in 1996 that to survive, the monarchy needed to slim down, Charles had tried to reduce the numbers appearing on Buckingham Palace's balcony. Among the first to be cut after 2002 was Prince Andrew and his daughters. By 2012, Charles had limited the numbers to merely 6. The Queen, Charles, Camilla, William, and Kate, and Harry. Over the following years, there were always doubts whether the slimmed-down version would survive. Would pressure from minor royals compel Charles to allow them to reappear on the balcony? The argument reemerged in August 2017. So, as the palace looked ahead towards Prince Philip's retirement and the Queen stepping down from some of her major duties and just taking on a few smaller things, they realized that they needed to reimagine how the monarchy would look with the younger set coming up. They knew that they needed to put William and Kate in the forefront because they are the monarchy's future. The plan was that the couple would be promoted as a focal point for the nation. Eventually, their children would be asked to represent the monarchy. In that scenario, Harry would be heavily engaged for the next 10 years, and then, as his royal duties declined, he would be free to pursue his own life. At that time, Harry had agreed without mentioning his frustrations. He said, okay, that's fine. I'll be sort of a stand-in for their kids until their kids are of age to represent themselves. And then Harry's star would begin to dim. Organizing his charities and starring at a few public meetings was not satisfactory in the long term. Living in a small house in Kensington Palace was becoming joyless. But life with Meghan was promising, because here he could imagine that he would no longer be a nobody. Christopher suspected that Harry, with Meghan's influence, was looking for an alternative future. He didn't want to be this dying star. He wanted to always remain in the forefront, and he wanted to be important. He talked often and continually that he realized that he wasn't important, and that really bothered him. Also looming was this documentary that the princes had agreed to be part of. William and Harry were going to do a documentary about their mother. And one of the problems about this, in Christopher's mind, was that this was just going to highlight how he had no control over the four princes, Charles, Andrew, William, and Harry. He felt like this documentary was just going to make the family look fractured and scattered to the wind. He feared that their antics made protecting their privacy harder and could damage the monarchy. Excessive exposure risked reducing the public's respect for the royal family. Too late, Christopher discovered that Harry had been encouraged by Meghan to share his truth about his mental state. So already he's worried about this documentary that's coming out about Diana, which is going to reignite everybody's frustration with Charles. Then he finds out that Meghan's been whispering to Harry about how he needs to come out and talk about his mental health. God forbid it. You know, and this is my thing. I don't understand why celebrities always feel like they need to come out and be a role model for all of us and share the fact that they're, you know, their mind is melting. Are we such a dim-witted people that we can't even consider getting help unless our favorite celebrity comes out and says, also my mind is melting? Like, why in the world can't we just be like, I need help, I'm gonna go get some help? I don't need permission from famous people to be like, oh, well, since they had problems, I'm allowed to have problems. That's weird. You know, I don't need to compare my station in life to that person's station in life. Oh, they got help, I'll get help. No, just go get help. It's just, I don't understand Harry needing to come out on this in this public place and tell everybody all his problems. Pick a few people. I'm not saying go through your whole life shrouded in mystery, never tell anybody that you're struggling. No, by all means, find a few people who you can share the truth with, but there's no earthly reason why you need to be out on a public platform telling everybody about your sorrows, your troubles, and your most intimate mental details. Just let the people in your life minister to you. Everybody in the world that's not their right. They don't get to know that about you. Know where to draw the line when you share. Meghan clearly does. I mean, this is the thing that bothers me. We've seen that she's had relationships in her life with people who have helped her to get a leg up that she never said anything about because she knew I shouldn't probably share those specific details. When it suits her, she knows when not to share things. She wants the world to know that Harry has mental health crisis. Then she gets to be the one in the couple that is steady and stable and thought well of. If everyone thinks that he is already dim and now he has all these mental health crises, it's going to make her star shine brighter. Harry comes out. He had first disclosed his mental anguish at a Heads Together event in Kensington Palace. He says to them, as though it had never occurred to anyone, anyone can suffer from mental health problems, even a member of the royal family. Okay, thanks, Elmo. We had no idea that that was possible. He wanted everybody to be talking about their mental health. He wanted everyone to speak up about it. And the thing is that in these interviews, he did seem charming and gracious and relaxed. And so it was a side of him that people were drawn to. I just want to be very clear. I am not saying that you need to shut up about your mental health and you can't share if you're struggling and you can't tell anybody if there's a problem and you can't. I'm not saying that. By all means, speak if you need to. I just wonder why Harry felt like he had to. I mean, before this, he never would have been like, let me just splash all of my feelings out there, because he's the one who says that he never was able to verbalize how he felt about the sadness with his mom and all of this stuff. Then Meghan comes into his life and is like, you know, you need to tell everybody all this stuff that's going on about you. Then you'll be able to heal from it. I just wish she hadn't been such an armchair psychologist and let him get some real help. Anyway, Harry's problem struck a chord. The public sympathy increased. Encouraged by Meghan that his old British stiff upper lip should be replaced with honest confession, Harry offered himself to Brian E. Gordon, a British journalist at the Daily Telegraph, as a haunted victim, addressing the catastrophic impact of Diana's death on his life. Even though the palace had told him, let's just not tell everybody all the things, he came out and laid bare his total chaos since 2012 to a woman who confessed to having also suffered from personal problems. She said that her problems were alcoholism, depression, and drug addiction. All things that we know that Harry has also struggled with. So having Gordon over there to listen to all of his problems, it must have just been a meeting of two minds. He says to Gordon, I just didn't know what was wrong with me. I'd probably been very close to a complete breakdown on numerous occasions. But he thanked William for urging him to seek psychiatric help. He said life had become better off once he had offloaded his stuff to somebody else. And didn't I say that when I was reviewing Spare, that his problem is that he needs to tell somebody else all the stuff in his life and he needs them to make it okay. He can't just bear his own emotional burden. He's got to find somebody who can help him carry the load. He said that losing his mom at the age of 12 had shut him down emotionally, and his way of dealing was to stick his head in the sand. We know this well from Spare. He said that keeping quiet had just made the problems worse, and so he felt that his only recourse in life to get better was to come out and speak to a newspaper about it. But to me, this is just another way of being self-centered. Because you can empower the world without having to tell all of your personal details. It doesn't have to just always be about you. If you want to have a positive impact on the world, then go out and be a positive person doing positive things. That honestly, I feel like, is more uplifting and empowering than listening to somebody tell about how mentally degraded they are. I get done listening to that and I feel low. But when I watch somebody go out and do great things, I'm not even saying that he couldn't have ever mentioned, I've really struggled with the death of my mother. But to come out and just talk about his total chaos and how he's just, his mind is melting and how he couldn't hardly pull it together and he's, constantly emotionally irregulated. I think that that does less for people than to just go out and see you doing great things, because we already know the story about his mom. We can already imagine how hard it was. But for him to rise above it, that is, I think, what inspires people. Well, Christopher was horrified by Harry's promise of future confessions. This had already been damning enough that he'd come out and say all these things to Brian E. Gordon in the Daily Telegraph. So he gathers a meeting of the minds. He gets everybody together because he wants to give everyone the message. Hey, you guys, listen up. Your first duty is to the Queen. It's not to you and all your pet projects and you're acting out, you're wilding out. It's not you getting a chance to air all your personal indignities. It's not you being able to be self-indulgent around the clock. That's not what your role is. You're supposed to be honoring the Queen. So why don't you all just pump the brakes on all of your self-pity? Why don't you just start looking for work that you can do for the Queen? And all these pet projects need to be put to the wayside. Everyone should work to serve the Queen. That was the resounding message that Christopher wanted to get across. He was over there trying to coordinate the efforts of all the houses between the princes. And of course, Harry didn't have his own house yet, but he could see that coming. So he's got the 4 princes and he wants everybody to have the same goals in mind, the same ambition. These are the projects. This is what we're doing. As houses, we're coordinating. You don't have your thing and you're your thing and you're your thing and you're your thing. No, we're all here together. Well, for the first time, it's not Harry griping about the Queen's staff. Andrew and Charles hated this. And though they had been at odds with each other before, they united in this. And they came together and they said, Mother, get rid of that guy. What is this plan that he has? We hate it, we hate it, we hate it. Get rid of him. And the Queen capitulated and got rid of Christopher. And as Christopher left, he warned them, all right, fine, but I'd keep an eye on Meghan. Because he had foreboding about how this was going to go down. He could see the way the wind blew, whether anybody else could see it or not. But even though Christopher had warned everybody, keep an eye on Harry. He is a problem, and so is Meghan. And her in his ear about his mental health and making him come out and make all these statements and exposing himself. We have worked so hard in his behalf, and he's just about to blow it. Keep an eye on him. This is what Christopher says as he leaves. But even for all of his warnings, even all of his predictions, he had not been able to predict Harry's self-destructive confession to Angela Levin for Newsweek magazine the following month. He said outright, "Is there anyone of the royal family who wants to be king or queen? I don't think so, but we all carry out our duties at the right time." Speaking for William and himself, he placed the brothers together on one pedestal. "We're involved in modernizing the British monarchy. We're not doing this for ourselves, but for the greater good of the people." It's unacceptable for him to be over here putting William's name in his mouth and saying, we. What is he talking about? He has no right to say William and I. And listen to the other things he says after this. Speaking for William, Tom Bauer goes on to say that this information about how we are involved in modernizing the British monarchy was a surprise for those who criticized the Yorkshire brothers for fulfilling just a fraction of the engagements of other royals, including their grandparents. Even more flippant was Harry's warning that an ordinary royal family would take away the firm's mystery. "Well, it's a tricky balancing act. We don't want to dilute the magic. The British public and the whole world needs institutions like it." I mean, what is this about how, we don't want to dilute the magic for the dirty, filthy masses with their sticky mouths and dirty hands who want their little picture shows? What is this? I mean, how dare he talk about people as though we don't... You guys are just human beings over there who just happen to have titles. And what is this about how, we don't want to dilute the magic? You don't want to dilute what magic? We're not watching magic happen over here. You guys are an ordinary family with ordinary problems. There was a novelty in Harry as a constitutional expert, suggesting that he and William would decide the monarchy's fate. "We want to make sure the monarchy lasts and are passionate about what it stands for, but it can't go on as it has done under the Queen." He suggested that the Queen endorsed their right to decide the future. "The Queen tells us to take our time. The monarchy is a force for good, and we want to carry on the positive atmosphere that the Queen has achieved for over 60 years, but we won't be trying to fill her boots." What has he ever done that has given him the authority to speak like this? That he is the one, he's the rudder of this ship. What is he talking about? "I sometimes still feel like I'm living in a goldfish bowl, but I now manage it better. I'm now fired up and energized, and I love charity stuff and meeting people and making them laugh." Charity stuff? "No child should be asked to walk behind a coffin, but I've made the best of it. Even though the whole time, my entire life, I've always thought, oh my God, get me out of here now." This is a terrible interview. Somebody should have rushed in there, clapped their hand over his mouth, and dragged him out of his seat. I think what's also very interesting is that in the same interview, he went out to say that he has always disliked being the spare and that he feels like there's a small window where people are interested in him, but then William's kids are going to come rip-roaring in and take his place. He said that, anticipating that insignificance, he always wanted to make something of his life, and if he couldn't do that, then he wanted to just get out of the royal family altogether and live an ordinary life. So it would prove that anonymity was never his original ambition. He did want to make something of himself. He did want to be known. And then barring that, he, thought about retreating, but his ambition was for everyone to know him. And this was a new Harry. Liberated by Meghan, he was willfully careless of the consequences of his quote-unquote truth. He just went in saying whatever came to his mind. So to end this chapter, those interviews were incredibly damning and incredibly hurtful to the family, incredibly hurtful to the image of the family, and Christopher's worst fears had indeed materialized. Because when you put into conjunction the situation with Harry's interviews, and then you added that onto the documentary that William and Harry had made about their mother, the state of people's opinion of the royal family, and of Charles in particular, had begun to degrade. In that documentary, they hadn't made any mention of their father, but it just reminded everybody that they blamed Charles and Camilla for their mother's misery, and that was not the image that people wanted put forth about Charles right there on the cusp of him eventually taking the crown. Charles's hope that William and Harry would agree to support Camilla's future queen seemed uncertain at that moment in time. I think things have significantly shifted, especially in William's relationship with his father, so much has changed since Harry has really come out and been a terrible person, and everybody knows that he's disloyal. That has cemented Charles and William together in ways that nothing ever could have. But at the time that this book was written, it was very uncertain what kind of support William and Harry were going to be giving to Charles and Camilla.